master of disguise. Zartan changes color right before your eyes.
Hey, welcome to Half the Battle, and welcome back to Main Character May. Today, we'll be looking at Zartan in the comics, cartoons, and we'll even take a quick look at the live-action movies. Let's start with the cartoons, shall we? Zartan first appeared in the Revenge of Cobra, the second G.I.Joe miniseries. In the first 5 minutes of the first episode, Cobra Commander has been captured, and Zartan, along with his dreadnoks, has been hired to get him out of prison. The very first time we see him, he shows off his camouflage abilities. But this would get dropped from the cartoons pretty quickly. Instead, they'd start focusing more on his disguise abilities. They also show off his chameleon vehicle and his ventriloquism when he captures Colonel Sharp.
To fool my people.
Thank you, Colonel Sharp.
Your voice was the only thing missing.
We also see an attribute of him that's exclusive to the cartoon. When he gets angry, his chest lights up red. And it sounds like a lightsaber.
Get back, you rowdy lot of vagabonds!
And why does it sound like a lightsaber? Because it's literally the sound of a lightsaber. Yeah, get ready for another digression. But this week, it's gonna be fun. I already mentioned this in a cartoon review once, but there's a reason Zartan's chest has the lightsaber sound effect, and that reason is Jim Henson and the Muppets. I sense you may want further explanation. Okay, so Jim Henson was friends with George Lucas, and when the cartoon series Muppet Babies was being made, Henson asked his buddy if he could do a Star Wars spoof. Lucas not only agreed, but gave him access to Star Wars footage to use and the special effects sound library. So when Sunbow, the studio that made the series, or rather their Korean subcontractor, got hold of all those Star Wars special effect sounds, they quietly added them to their own sound library for use in other projects. And that's why you should really go through old G.I.Joe and Transformers episodes to play Spot the Star Wars. Okay, digression over. In the Revenge of Cobra, Zartan does two notable things. He helps the commander escape at the beginning, and at the end he shows his mercenary colors by trying to auction off a valuable piece of equipment to both the Joes and Cobra. He's got one other characteristic that's only in the cartoon. When he's exposed to sunlight, he turns blue, but not to blend in. In fact, it's a bad thing as he reacts almost like he's a vampire.
Oh, sunlight! I hate sunlight.
Though this too gets used less as the series goes on. He appears in the cartoon series quite a lot and stays true to his character, being the disguise guy and only being loyal to the money or gold he gets paid. My favorite disguise of his is in Lights Camera Cobra, where Hollywood is making a G.I. Joe movie, so he just pretends to be the actor playing Zartan.
Look, Buster, I'm not letting some play actor put down my unit and its gear.
It's real Zartan.
It's brilliant, really. I've joked before about how Zartan infiltrates G.I. Joe headquarters so much he's got his own bunk bed now, but in season 2 of the show, they basically make the same joke.
Only I can gain that access for you.
The Joes have a file on you a mile long. I can sneak in and out before they suspect a thing.
Zartan didn't appear in the Deke series, even though Ninja Force did, so they could have used his version 2 outfit. Still, he had a great run in the Sunbow series. That brings us to the comic books. Needless to say, Zartan had a huge arc there. He is first introduced in the very last panel of issue 24, a story that has Cobra Commander escaping G.I. Joe custody, but unlike his cartoon debut, Zartan has little to do with it. He's properly introduced in issue 25, named Zartan. I already reviewed that issue, so I'm not gonna go into it again. I will give you an overview of Zartan's character arc and his more notable feats in the comic book. Spoiler warning for the entire G.I. Joe comic book series, obviously. And also for my future comic book reviews now that I think about it. Going through his comic arc is sort of tricky since a lot happened to him before the comic even starts, later told in flashbacks. Way before issue 1, he had been hired by the guy who would become Cobra Commander to kill Snake Eyes, but he ends up accidentally killing Storm Shadow's uncle instead. Yeah, there's a whole interconnected past between everybody important in the G.I. Joe universe and Snake Eyes. What's important about Zartan's past is that he became an expert bowman and used these skills in his attempt to kill Snake Eyes. His teacher was so ashamed by this he committed ritual suicide. In the regular comic run, he again showed his prowess with a bow by killing Serpentor during the Cobra Civil War, effectively ending the conflict. I think it was this whole archery thing that made Hasbro consider him for Ninja Force, as his card art shows him with a bow, and the figure came with one. A garish neon orange one? Because, once again, this toy hates me personally. His next major feat is a confrontation with the Blind Master, another ninja that has connections to Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, because who doesn't at this point? No, seriously, I'm surprised Shipwreck's parrot doesn't have a connection to freaking Snake Eyes. They have a fatal fight, but the blind guy tells him his old master had forgiven him with his dying breath. This revelation has such an impact on him he renounces his evil ways and turns good. By impersonating the guy he just killed and taking on his ward. Okay, so renouncing evil is very much graded on a curve here. Later on, he meets up with Billy, Cobra Commander's son, in the guise of the Blind Master and infiltrates Cobra Island. Before they can really do anything, they are discovered by Cobra Commander, who locks them in a freighter, then buries that freighter under a freaking volcano. Yes, I know there's a lot more going on in that story, but it doesn't concern Zartan, so I'm not gonna get into it here. And that's the end of Zartan. For quite a while at least. It's not till a good 15 issues later we find out he and Billy escaped from that prison, though many others died. They end up with Destro, who they team up with since Cobra Commander wants them all dead and has captured the Baroness. They succeed in getting the Commander to back off in the end and get the Baroness back. Something like 20 issues later, they meet up again, with Zartan showing off his new appearance. You can tell Larry Hama was just thrilled with this new design as he transforms back into his old outfit right away. Though he does use his version 2 look more later on. Also, he's not called a ninja in the comic. They end up back at Castle Destro, and Zartan hangs out with him and the Baroness at the castle for most of the rest of the series, until Cobra Commander shows up with a retcon and a reset button. He shows them his face, and it turns out Mindbender had implanted a device in their brains years ago that would mind control them if and when that happened, turning them evil again. And Zartan remains that way for the rest of the series. Yeah, it's a very unsatisfying ending that he shares with the Baroness and others. Though Larry Hama has stated that he never meant for everybody to remain mind-controlled, but the comic book ended before that story had a chance to be resolved. And that was Zartan in the original comic. Going through his appearances, you can see how they quickly made holograms the main source of his powers instead of innate abilities. The whole color-changing thing doesn't come up after his first few appearances. Like I mentioned last week, in the later modern comics, he found out he had a daughter named Sanya. I don't really read those comics a lot, but I do know they also gave him a skin disease related to his genetic tampering, even though that wasn't a thing in the Marvel comics. Lastly, as promised, we'll briefly go over the live-action movies. In the first movie, The Rise of Cobra, he does two things. He infiltrates the pit, killing CoverGirl in the process, the asshole, and later is injected with nanomachines to turn him into a true shapeshifter. At the very end of the movie, he replaces the President of the United States, setting up the sequel. So, in Rise of Cobra, he was played by Arnold Vosloo, of the Mummy fame, while in the sequel, Retaliation, he was played by Jonathan Pryce of Game of Thrones fame, since he was now impersonating the President. I know it was always planned like that, but damn, that is one hell of an excuse for a recasting. In that movie, he uses his powers to basically kill off the G.I.Joe team and works towards world domination. He ends up getting killed by Storm Shadow. And that was Zartan, a very intriguing character in both the cartoon and comic. And that does it for Zartan overall. The only real misstep, I can even forgive the Ninja Force figure, was that second paragraph on the first file card, but we've already discussed that at length. Oh, so much length. There's also one thing that didn't occur to me until after I'd done the action figures episode. Why didn't they remake Ninja Force Zartan as a Shadow Ninja? Their whole gimmick was that they turn invisible. It would have fit perfectly with the character. Well, that about wraps it up, but we're not quite done. You may have noticed I didn't mention a cartoon episode, one that has his name in it. So next week, we'll be taking a look at Countdown for Zartan to round off main character May. Yes, I know that this year May has 5 Tuesdays in it, but I think we're pretty much done here, and I need a break anyway. Well, I'll see you next time, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?
He's an evil master of disguise. Zartan changes color right before your eyes. Zartan.
Introducing Zartan. Zartan changes color in sunlight.
There's Zartan! He's escaping